Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. My name is Jacob Cooper, host of the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder podcast. We are now streaming on all major platforms, so please make sure to subscribe to stay up to date to weekly interviews coming your way. But today, my honored guest on episode number 18 is Afterlife researcher Sandra Champlain. You may be familiar from Sandra Champlain from her own podcast, We Don't Die Radio, which I've been an honored guest on several times. And Sandra is also the author of We Don't Die, the book. So you can find that on Amazon and all places. But Sandra is a wonderful researcher with a lot of credibility, and she's had a tremendous transformation from being a skeptic into the afterlife to now a firm believer. So you don't want to miss our conversation with the one and only Sandra Champlain right here happening on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. Sandra Champlain, thank you so much for coming and being my guest here on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Such an honor to have you here. How have you been?
It's so nice to be here. Thank you for asking me. And I have been great, enjoying the nice summer weather these days.
Terrific. Yeah, for viewers that don't know, you have a tremendous podcast that has recorded countless, interviews that I've been on twice. And now you're coming here on my own home turf, which is great. So it's great to have that synergistic support. And I've been a big fan of your work for several years, and I know you're a tremendous pioneer. But for viewers who don't know, Sandra Champlain, maybe they're living under a rock the last couple of years, or they're new to this stuff. Tell us a little bit about Sandra and the work that you currently do, and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I'd love to. First of all, this is my book that I wrote. It's called There we go.
We Don't Die.
We Don't Die, a Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. So a little bit about me is not in a million years would I ever think that I would be the messenger for this message, because I never believed in any of this. I grew up with just great parents, but it was one of those, you got to see it to believe it kids, from my parents. And dad was an airline pilot and mom an entrepreneur with travel agencies and things. And we had a local medium in town who made a prediction back in, I don't even know when it was, when I was a kid, who said the Maid of the Mist, the boat that is underneath Niagara Falls, was going to flip over, and there was going to be a boatload of deaf children on it. So that was a prediction made. I remember it was in the news. She didn't live too far away, and it didn't come true. So that just really cemented that there's nothing to any psychic medium. This is all just people who need to believe in something. We grew up Catholic, so we did technically have a faith in something. I spent every year of my life in Catholic school, but just because I did that did not mean that I had faith. So growing up, I thought I was a normal kid. I went out on my own. I graduated as a chef from college. I went into hotel and restaurant management and cooking and started businesses and things. But back in the mid-90s, I developed this huge fear of dying. It seemed to come out of the blue, but it was something where I couldn't sleep at night. I would look up at the stars and see all the stars and just wonder about the vastness of the universe. And for some reason, it just impacted me. Who am I? What is my life for? Will I go on? And it was actual fear. It was just this not knowing what would happen if I died. And so that was the catalyst to get me to start researching the afterlife. And I started off very secretly, of course, and then I can talk more about this during the show if you'd like. Sure. But in 2010, my dad passed, and it was really, really awful passing from cancer. Suffered more than one could ever imagine. And not only did my dad pass, but my siblings and I became one of those families that you hear about that were fighting over everything. And that was not predicted, why we would do something like that. And I hit an all-time low, not only losing dad, but also relationships with my siblings, not being able to see their kids. And I instinctively went on this journey. What is grief? Why does it have to hurt so bad? Why would families who are fairly normal turn into such monsters? And I uncovered a world of what happens in our biology when we grieve, and how much is in our control, how much is out of our control, some tools to help get through the process. And I put an online audio out there in the world. You can still find it on YouTube, called How to Survive Grief. And in just a few months after Dad passed and after I created this, it went semi-viral. Many thousand people had heard it. And I started receiving emails from people that not only did it give them some answers about grief and give them compassion about family members, but then people said that they chose not to end their lives because of the words. So I felt like I needed to get these words out as far as I could. Very few people are looking for books on grief. And by that point, I had collected so much information about the afterlife. I had taken a medium class. I had recorded electronic voice phenomena. Like, I knew that we go on. I knew that our loved ones are around us. But I was so afraid that if people knew that about me, that they would shun me, that people thought people who believed in this were crazy. So eventually I just got that nudge from my soul that said, you can really save lives if you share this. So as synchronicities happen, I end up going to a weekend retreat on writing a book. I talked to a publisher. I pitched the idea. The book got fast forwarded. It was like, how fast can you write it? And I wrote it in 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they fast forwarded it to get it published right away. As miracles come in, I got to be ghost. No, I got to be, I merged guest and host, ghost. I got to be a guest on Coast to Coast AM with the great George Norrie. Book hit #1 in US, UK, Canada. And from there, it's just really been my privilege to not only share my story, which I think is a good one, but for the past now 10 years, I have had We Don't Die Radio. So I've just hit 400 episodes recorded of why people believe in the afterlife and sharing good people and their stories. And Coast to Coast AM, along with iHeartRadio, just 2 years ago, asked me to have a podcast with them. So I have that called Shades of the Afterlife, and which is more of me and shorter interviews, but a lot of me kind of investigating the different reasons to believe. And so now I'm at well over 140 episodes of that. And I truly believe my mission on earth is to help people believe in the afterlife, help people through grief. And I think grief is what gets people interested in, is there an afterlife? But the very most important thing, like yourself, is how to have a powerful life while we're here, that we go on, our loved ones are still cheering us on. And what is our life for, and how to really live it passionately, make mistakes, keep on keeping on, and really get our money's worth out of life while we're here. So that, in a nutshell, is who I am.
It's interesting when I hear you talk, because, a lot of people have labels on, transformative experiences, whether that's NDE or, shared death experiences. But I think what's underreported is how profound grief can be in one's life, and how that could be a spearhead of reevaluation of life itself, and maybe people are just comfortable or they're fearful of the subject matter, but it's expedited exposure therapy, to look at what you mentioned as a big fear, that you've had as a kid, to now it seems like this is a part of your everyday life and not something that you fear. My question for you is, was there one thing that moved the needle from a skeptic into a believer? Was it like a series of things? Like what? I mean, at least for me, the near-death experience was the big thing for you. Like, was there like one or two things that you could point to that just said, I can't go back like this, when you saw evidence? That I know you did a lot of research on this stuff. So I'm wondering, yeah.
Yeah, the two biggest things earliest on is, one, I took a weekend class in mediumship, and it was by somebody who was famous at the time. I had seen her do a stage presentation, and my brain really wanted to say this somehow has got to be fixed. These people in the audience were plants, but it didn't cost much money. And she just struck a nerve with me that there's something to this. So I'd flown out to California, taken a weekend course. And the promise is if you attend the course, you are a medium. And I'm thinking, now I'm not sure mediums really even are real. And the second thing is, if there is that gift, it certainly wouldn't be given to me. And what was explained in the very beginning was that we are all, these souls having a human experience, and that our loved ones come through in very subtle ways. And she gave a few brief instructions, but she says, we're not going to do a medium reading now. She says, we're just going to practice as if we were. So she says, everybody grab a partner. And I picked some lady. I didn't know anybody there. We sat knee to knee, and she just explained to us to just close our eyes, create this bubble of love around us, however we wanted to visualize that, and invent someone standing behind our partner. And, I'm creative. I'm a chef by trade, so I could invent somebody. Yeah. And then she says, simply tell the story. It's man, a woman. Who do you feel they are? Any details about them. And if you feel that there's a message for the person, just do it. So because I was not really doing it, I just evoked my imagination, right? If somebody told me that I was doing the real thing, then my fearful brain would have shut down. But that wasn't what we were told. We were just told we were going to pretend and imagine, which is the best thing ever. So with my eyes closed, I invented that there was a man standing behind my partner, that he was a grandfather on the mother's side. And this whole time I'm verbalizing it. I saw a man with blonde hair and blue eyes and a big gap between his front teeth. He had windburned skin. And I heard the name Jan, that he was a fisherman in Denmark. I saw him coughing and then smoking a cigarette. So I felt like he died of lung cancer. And then again, I'm verbalizing this with my eyes closed. And then I got this feeling that he never told his own daughter, which is this lady's mom, that he loved her. He was just a real tough parent, and he just never did. So it was a message that, let your mom know that I love her. I never said it when I was alive. So I simply opened my eyes to tell her, okay, it's your turn to pretend to be a medium. And this lady's just crying. Her grandfather's name was Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He fit the description. He died of lung cancer, and never did her mom ever hear that he loved her. So what was that for a skeptic who didn't believe in any of this? That was a holy cow moment for me. And as the weekend progressed, once I was told to do it again, suddenly the fear crept in, and, oh, can I do this? And so then I was wrong. There were times that I was correct when I was trying to put this conscious mind out, but there's this flow, I think, that we all have. And I think we really, truly are all mediums as a divine soul. But when that conscious mind comes in telling us we're wrong, which it always does, right? Or we're not good enough, it shuts it down. So although I did not go on to become a practicing medium, I've kept my foot in the door every now and again. We host online classes every so often. I do. And there really is nothing like it, because you actually feel like you are the deceased person, but you're full of life. You feel the love for the partner. You have these memories, and it's like, where are these coming from? And you just have to trust that what comes out of your mouth is something for them. You're not always right, but it's a beautiful experience. So that was number one that happened. Are you ready for number two?
I love that story, but first and foremost, I want to say that this sounds like a gift for you and for her. For you, you were able to invoke and open up this gift that was always inside of you, and you were able to use that, to give to another. And I think that's beautiful, where there's reciprocity, and there's synergistic support where you're both able to benefit from it. But wow, that was an incredible moment that I'm sure changed the trajectory of your life, that this isn't something made up, but this is something that you have within yourself too. And that created a knowing. Yeah. But what's number two? This was mind blowing to me, because I never heard that story from you. So thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. And I didn't tell you, she came right back with talking about my grandfather. It totally described him. And, my grandfather passed when I was 14, and the fact that she's telling me that he's with me and supports me, I was like, oh my gosh. You could see his German Shepherd and that he walked with a cane and he was bow-legged and all of that. It was incredible. So number 2 came several years later. I was very busy at the time. My mom and I owned for over 30 years a catering business, and we cooked for race car teams. So we were on the road all the time. And so I didn't have a lot of time to explore afterlife things. But someone had told me about electronic voice phenomena. This is using a digital recorder capturing the sound of wind or a fan. People call it white noise because there was a horror movie made about it. And I had enough times that this kept popping up into my life to know that this is something I want to research. And I remember buying a book by Tom and Lisa Butler called There Is No Death and There Are No Dead. And I bought this recorder, and I turned the TV onto a channel that had a lot of static, and I pressed the record button. And then, Jake, I scared the heck out of myself. I said, this is like, I'm a good Catholic girl, right? This is the devil's work. And so I tucked it in a drawer thinking, I'm going too far with this one.
This is Ouija board kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is too much. This is over the top. Because inside of me, in the back of my mind, I thought, I'm not effective enough as a medium to be able to convince anybody of anything. So I never told people that I took that course because I was frightened. They'd say, well, who do you see around me? And I'd be wrong, and I'd be laughed at, and I'd lose friends and family. So that's kind of what I sentenced myself to. But I wanted to share. I figured I need something that's audible or visual or something. And so later that very same year, I was just burnt out, and I wanted to go to a retreat center. And lo and behold, there's the Omega Center in Rhinebeck, New York, right?
Right in my hometown.
Yes. Love it, love it, love it. So I just happened to go on their website the one weekend I had free, and it was, I think, October 2005. And who is there? Tom and Lisa Butler, Electronic Voice Phenomena.
Wow.
Their first time ever at the Omega Center. And I think it's their last. I mean, they were there just for one weekend. And I thought, I'm going. Like, I gotta go. And I was really scared because, again, this is good Catholic girl thinking. There were only 5 people in the class, plus Tom and Lisa. They shared so many examples of EVPs and different things that have, different experiments that they've done. They were both spiritual ministers. This was all done with love. They told the story that they taught this to a Hollywood movie company, not knowing that they were going to use it for a horror movie, because only messages of love and funny messages came through. I mean, this is really a beautiful thing. The bad news about the movie was a lot of people started thinking, oh, EVPs, there's something scary to it. The good news was a lot of people started investigating after the movie White Noise, and were able to follow Tom and Lisa Butler and realize that it's messages of love and fun that came through. So over the course of this weekend, we all had an opportunity to do these recordings, whether we recorded the sound of a fan or the leaves rustling in the wind. And when we would bring our recordings in, and we put them in Tom and Lisa's computer for them to listen, because I'm just hearing wind and leaves, but they gave me like such accurate details about my deceased loved ones. I'm thinking, how can you hear that? Wow. They said, the brain and the ears really need to be trained to listen to sounds within sounds, almost like if you don't speak another language and you hear it, you're not going to recognize it. But if you learn a few words, and all of a sudden your ears will pick up and go, hey, I recognize that. So on the final evening we had together, I went back to the cabin that I was in, and it was in the woods. Beautiful, Mega Center is beautiful.
Yes.
It was a pouring rain that night. So I held out my digital tape recorder, and I imagined that my aunt, my uncle, and my grandmother and grandfather were standing at the foot of the bed. And I pressed record, and I said, if you guys are really here and I'm supposed to make a difference with this. I said, I need you to try to talk really loud so I can hear it. And then I'll say goodnight. So I held this digital tape recorder out for just a minute. And then I said, okay, good night. And then turned it off. I didn't have a computer to put it in to, listen to every bit, but I did have a pair of earphones and I plugged it in, and I got goosebumps around second number 46 because it said in a man's voice, "Good night, Sandra."
Wow.
And then I hear two women voices say, "Good night, good night." And then another male voice say, "Good night." Well, that is the experience that pushed me over the edge, because on one hand, I was really excited because it was real. And then I have to be honest, I was also freaked out, because then I thought, do I have no privacy? Are people always around me? Like, oh my God, what is this? So we went into class the next morning for the final day of class, and I was able to share my recording, and it was called a Class A because everybody could hear it. It wasn't just whispers in the background. Everybody could hear it. And the people that were with me in class either had a spouse pass or a child pass. And to see what it did for them, how it gave them life back, I thought there is something to this. So for the next couple of years, I was hardcore recording these, working with people that I met and that I knew, never charged a penny, but just try to really see, what can we hear? I gained an ear for it, got all kinds of beautiful messages that I couldn't have possibly known, but I heard. And then, what came in too is every now and again, I'd see a picture in my mind's eye of a person, and they pull out the picture and that was the same person. So those are the two absolute biggest experiences that got me to say, you know what, you may be scared, but you got to start sharing this.
Wow. And this is just hard, undeniable evidence right in front of you. I have no idea how you slept that night, because as as eye-opening as it is, it feels like a little intrusive. Like, we're not alone. People are watching us. It's late at night and we're, in our cabin. It feels almost invasive. Like, and it's the fact that they knew your name, said it there. I'm wondering why EVPs aren't as brought up as much within the work that we do. I'm noticing Lilydale is doing stuff like this a little bit more, but it seems to not have as much attention or focus that it could have. I think when it's done the right way, as you've experienced, it's transformed, a skeptic to a believer, to someone who really knows this stuff. But it seems also it could bring on a lot of stuff too. So you have to be careful, with it. Is that a little bit right?
I don't think so. I think what the problem is, if I can be honest, is we human beings are a little bit lazy, and we want to pay for something and we want to have it work and we want to do it right away. If we think of the intelligence needed from those in the spirit world or the hereafter to do this, they literally have to figure out how to manipulate sound that is recorded on a device and rearrange it into words. It is something that doesn't happen right away. And I'm guessing my loved ones were really working on it from the other side all weekend. And then finally they're like, come on, we got to shout. This girl can't hear it. But it takes that commitment. And even, Sonia Rinaldi, who captures audios, pictures, videos of people now in the afterlife, which is amazing. She even says we need to have that commitment, that we tell our loved ones, okay, on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 o'clock, we're going to work together, and then keep it up. And that's one of the reasons she feels that she's brought through so many. She's got a team of scientists on the other side working with her. It's not a short-term thing. It's a long-term thing. And, I think there's easier ways that our loved ones can come through our thoughts and our feelings, but unfortunately we don't trust it. But don't get me wrong. There's a great book called Do Dead People Watch Me in the Shower? And I think that's a great title. And the answer is no. They are living their lives. They are continuing to learn and grow. Whatever they didn't do here on earth, they're continuing over there. but they're only a heartbeat or a thought away. I mean, they can multitask and, and be with us. So it's not like they're sticking with you the whole time, but as evidence on, so many medium readings and demonstrations that I've seen, it shows just how close they really are.
It seems like what you're saying is there's a bit of a halfway point where they have to come from, their level and meet us halfway, but also we have to also meet them halfway, kind of like if we think of frequency and stuff like that, we just have to, get ourselves up to a certain point, and they have to get ourselves to a certain point in order to hear it. For yourself, do you try to practice this on your own? Because it seems like you have, experiences of connections to loved ones. Do you try to amp your frequency to sometimes hear loved ones, or if people are looking to connect, is there anything that you could recommend viewers, to find that halfway point to a degree from your research and studies?
Yeah, there's something called sitting in the power, and it's a bit different than meditation, but it's getting to the point of just having a little loving prayer with whatever it is you believe in. You can call it God, call it the universe, call it light. When we think of our cell phones, right, to use them, we have to keep them charged. And there's a lot of benefit that we've heard about meditation and things, but there's a practice that I do, and people can do this any way they want to. But I imagine within myself, there's a light. They call it the light of the soul or divine light. It doesn't matter. It's a visualization that I do. And I imagine that this light just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And sooner or later, out of my pores, the brightest light is just shining. And then I imagine for myself, it's God. But I imagine the sun being this huge ball of light, and that these beams are coming off the sun. And at some point, my beams and those beams, they just kind of merge together. And I am a simple believer that it's not the words of a prayer that matter. It's our intent. And so I usually just say something like, I'm here to be used. I'm here to serve. Charge me or give me whatever I need, help me along the journey, and I'm here. And so I just then start paying attention to my breathing. If thoughts come in or whatever, I just try to let them go. But it's just finding that peace, like when we plug in our phone and we see it's charging, just no decisions, no commentary, just let it charge. And whether it's 10 minutes or longer, I think that helps. And I know some of the best mediums on planet Earth say that is the single best thing that they can do for their mediumship to be good, because those in the unseen world get to work with us, work with our energy, work with our training from their point of view. So I think it can help in anything. I know it helps physically. I know it helps our blood pressure. And I know so many other things that it helps when we can quiet our mind.
So it's kind of like what Dr. Gary Schwartz calls like the cell phones, right? We have our cell phones and we have to like recharge our own cell phones, if you will. So yeah, no, that was a beautiful demonstration. I'm hopeful my viewers will start to apply what you just, demonstrated, and I know that's worked with you. Do you feel in a way that your path was there for a reason, meaning that you came to this through trepidation and fear and uncertainty as a skeptic, and that's transformed to someone who has a clear knowing in a big part? Do you feel that was, and also experienced grief, do you feel like your progressions that you've had in your life are there for you to relate to others? Do you feel like a divine calling for that? Because we all come to this world all knowing, but sometimes we forget, and maybe that forgetfulness is there for a reason to have more compassion to others. Is that something that you feel within yourselves when you tune into spirit?
I absolutely do. I have had so many synchronicities on the journey that it's like, oh my gosh, it really feels as if maybe I signed up for this before I came into life, or my soul said, hey, I'm up for this. I'm a hard worker. But I think that we believe people that have been in our shoes. I mean, you think of somebody who's really, really wealthy and worked hard, maybe started off in poverty, and created this wealth and is now giving back. They are so inspiring. And normally they're just down to earth people. Versus you take somebody who was possibly born into it and always had it good. Whose story is going to be more inspiring? I would say the one who started with nothing. And for me, I was a skeptic. I was actually nasty. You know, I'd see people in a bookstore in the spiritual section, and I thought, oh, those poor people, those poor people looking for something. Oh my gosh, you know, it was awful. So I think I am the perfect messenger. I am still skeptical because there's some strange things out there. So I gotta, you know, if it works for me, you know, I'll believe it. But there's some strange people out there. But I think for everyone, you got to have your own experiences. You just can't take my word for it. And even starting to talk to your loved ones and quieting your mind. I know one night, I wasn't even expecting this, but I was talking to my dad and I said, Dad, can you help me believe that this is real? And in a matter of seconds, I got this slideshow in my mind of pictures and times that my dad and I spent together and things that we had done. And they came out of the blue really fast. And there's no way I even remembered those things and could create that slideshow so fast. And that just was like, okay, you're here. My former boyfriend passed just about a year ago. And even though we had been broken up for a couple of years, we had been together a long time. I was sad about it. I really was. And he was one of the funniest people I ever met. And you know, I've heard songs that definitely remind me of him, but there are times that all of a sudden something so funny comes into my mind, almost like when somebody tells you a one-liner and everybody just cracks up. But it comes into my head when I least expect it, when I'm not thinking of anything even similar. And it's so funny that I just burst out in laughter, right? That never happens. But it happens. And so I say to people, you know, first of all, we spend so much time, our brain does, thinking about the future or feeling guilty about the past. Very few times that we really are in the present. And if we can make some time in our daily life, no matter what we're doing, to be 100% present to it and let that brain chatter go, that's an opportunity for our loved ones to plant a feeling within us, a memory, pictures. That's the easiest way for them to communicate with us. Our conscious mind will try to blow it off, thinking that's just our imagination. But that's how they communicate. That's how mediumship works. It all works through our imagination. So talk to them, trust what comes through, keep a journal. Little miracles show up, synchronicities show up. That's real.
And you would agree, don't try to force it, because I get a lot of emails from people in acute grief who are saying, oh my God, I feel terrible. Everyone else that I know has signs. I get nothing. Why me? And I think it's almost kind of like a gentle tap on the shoulder. If we try to force it too much, we may just be solo focused and what we want to see or hear that we'll miss, you know, a lot more. But it just has to kind of come to us versus us forcing it. But as you alluded to, the power of intention, the power of the question, being open, observing, not absorbing, and just taking a step back and being light with this and almost kind of playful with this and not trying to be too dense, you know, with the stuff to kind of happen. Is that a little bit along?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my heart goes out to anybody that's experiencing grief. And a gift to your listeners and viewers at my website, you can see wedon'tdie.com. If you scroll to the bottom of the page and you join my mailing list, you don't have to join forever, but if you put your name and your email address in, what will pop up, and it says a few chapters of Sandra's book. The secret is it is the entire book. Chapter 10 is how to survive grief. And I recommend to anyone, just make yourself familiar about how the grieving process works, what's happening in your brain, what's happening in your body. Give yourself some tools to help move through it. But back to these signs, yeah, we want to say, hey, Dad, are you there? And we want the lights to go on and off, right?
Right.
I can't imagine my grandmother trying to figure out how that's done. There's a couple of things. One, I think when we're grieving, we're in just such a a state that we need to be gentle on ourselves. We may not have the highest energy levels. I mean, I know I didn't, and I know my grief lasted a long time, but also our loved ones are living in a place that they may be so close to you and right there with you and holding you, that they're so close that you can't feel their love, but their arms are around you. And also, it is said in the afterlife, there is no time. So what could feel like a year for us could be a blink of an eye to them. So they know that we're going to be back together. And they know we're hurting, and they will do everything they can to let you know. And to your viewers and listeners, even just pulling out a notepad or opening up the notepad on your computer, have a conversation with your loved one, and then imagine if they were writing back what it is that they say, and then talk to them again. That's another practice we can get in, because in the beginning, the responses that are coming from them might be 99% you and 1% them. But in time, and journaling is really great when we're experiencing grief. But in time, there might be some things that you see come through that you think, that really sounds like something they would say. And that might be the way they try to work with you. And it's healing. And when negative thoughts come and negative dreams come, I truly believe that is our subconscious mind, and it's coming from us. But when we have those dreams that it feels like they were right with us, and the love is there, and they're sharp and clear, like an NDE, those are real. When we have words come through that you think, I don't remember even writing this, and they're filled with love, that's them. So there are ways that we can kind of get the ball rolling, quiet the mind, spend some time, imagine them, if it's a loved one, that they come real close, invite them in. You might get the hairs standing up on your arms, and, ask them to kiss you on the cheek or pat you on the head, and give them that opportunity. Not a one-shot deal, but practice with them every week, whatever it may be. And you'll see in time just how close they are.
Yeah. And as you alluded to, a lot of what stops people from connecting is they just feel, oh, it's just my own thoughts and it's wishful thinking. But our loved ones work with their own thoughts, and that's how they connect to us. So we have to be able to distinguish at times, but also be open to the fact that they come to us oftentimes through thought energy. And if we see some of the symbolism around them, you just can't make this stuff up. The probability a lot of these synchronicities happening are like 0.000, so if you pay attention, you could see a lot more. So thank you for that. As someone who's had a great deal of, as you said, a fear, which is very common, and now you've been able to transform that. For someone one of my viewers who may be going through grief or does fear the afterlife, what kind of tidbits could you give to help out that viewer who's feeling very scared of death, or maybe going through grief and wanting to transform, their grief? Like, do you have any tips or tools from your own, journey in pain? Because I think in a way our pain could define our purpose, and certainly it has for you.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, a lot of this is inner child psychology, I'm sure, for you, where you're seeing this, but can you speak to that little girl inside of you, or that, I know you get a lot of emails for those type of predicaments.
It's tough. First of all, anybody who has a loved one who has passed or experiencing grief, my heart goes out to you. I think, to be honest, it's the hardest thing that anyone has to deal with. Sometimes it's easier to lose a limb than it is to lose a loved one, and physical pain is brutal, but the emotional pain from grief is, I think, the worst thing ever. First thing is, know that a lot of grief is out of your control. Our body works on what's called neurotransmitters, just like a car, it uses gasoline and oil and power steering fluid and windshield wiper fluid, et cetera, and so forth. We run on these neurotransmitters, and you hear of serotonin and dopamine and all these others. When we experience a loss, we deplete greatly these neurotransmitters. And so that explains for the sleepless nights, the uncontrollable crying, the anger. You may feel like you're losing your memory. our perception changes. And that's an explanation of why so many families fight, by the way, is because we're not dealing with reality with minds that are healthy. You know, if you think of a drug addict and they're taking away their drug, they're going through withdrawal, and you would never trust those people with, you know, your bank account information and all that. And you have, and you know, you feel for them. You really have compassion for them. The grieving brain is very similar. Love is, I hate to say it this way, like an addiction. When we love someone, there really is a chemical bond that we feel. And when they're no longer with us, we go through this withdrawal. The more we love, the more it hurts. And it's brutal. So what can we do? Number one is understand the grieving process. That's why I give everybody my book who wants to read it. Chapter 10. But doing things like being in the present moment, being with people, talking, getting some sunlight, eating healthy, going for a walk, times that you can read or watch a movie and just get your mind off the grief just for a little bit. It helps those healthy neurotransmitters to come back. And eventually you'll feel like this dark cloud has lifted. So that's part of grief. It's brutal. People seem to go one of two ways when we grieve. One is they can die internally and stop living, being in such a state, or they can use it as an opportunity for growth. And I like to talk about that pine cone that's out in California and other areas of the world, that the only way there can be regrowth is if there's a huge forest fire, and these pine cones need that heat before there can be regrowth. So I think grief can be that for us. It is what can get us on that regrowth, get us looking for answers of who am I? What is my life for? You know? So not a bad thing. And I think one of the reasons we are here on planet Earth is, you know, we forget who we really are. These are these divine souls. And the game of life is not often a pleasurable one, but I think we can all agree through our toughest times, there is this wisdom that comes for us, but not only for us. When we talk to someone who is in the shoes we used to be in, we can give a great deal of advice. We can be compassionate. We can love. You know, I'd much rather be this Sandra who's gone through so much pain than the one who didn't, because the difference I'm able to make with my fellow traveler is a lot. I don't push this on anybody. I don't think anybody should push this on anybody, but each one of us has something in whatever we're passionate about where we can make a difference for another person. And as far as believing in the afterlife, I wish that 24 hours a day, Jake, that I remembered that I'm a divine soul having a human experience. No, I get reeled in by my own thoughts and my own mind. And that's why I thank you for interviewing me. And that's why I love interviewing guests, because it reminds me of who I am. But I offer to people, both my podcasts are absolutely free. And when you start hearing stories of other people, like your story and so many others, and you start hearing about the evidence through science, there's so many great things happening with science and medicine in the afterlife, then that little brain, like I had that skeptical brain that would say none of this is possible. When you start hearing from such reputable people, and then you hear all these great people who've had so many signs, it can shift the needle for you that, okay, maybe there is something there. And then you can take some time for you and try to be in the present moment. And all of a sudden, all of a sudden this song maybe came on the radio that used to be your song. And it's not a song played a lot, or things come to your mind or memories come in, and keep a little journal for yourself. Whatever we focus on will increase. So if you continually focus on negative, you're going to get a whole slew of that. If you say, you know, today's a miraculous day, by the time I go to bed tonight, I'm going to have a lot to be grateful for, then you spend your day looking for good. And then all of a sudden these little things come into your mind, jot them down. And the more we focus on that, the more it'll grow. But it is a journey that we each need to go on. And I wish I could give, you know, everybody a magic wand and voila, you experienced everything I've experienced in the last 26 years to, you know, reality.
It's kind of like what Zig Ziglar talks about: our attitude, not our aptitude, will define our altitude. And so,
Yes.
so much of life is an inner game of opportunity, and there's so many different channels to tune into and perceptual viewpoints. But yes, it's very significant to be aware of what we're focusing on, because that tends to magnify. I have to ask you, um, you mentioned you just had a lot of fear or uncertainty with death, and now it seems throughout your through a lot of years of research, you've been able to really gather information, and your whole channel is called We Don't Die. So for those wondering, they've heard my experience, but what do you really think happens from your gathered research and your personal connection when we do die? Is it a subjective experiences? Are there commonalities that happens, when souls cross over? What, have you really kind of gathered as a bit of your conclusion through your research?
Happy to share.
Yeah.
First of all, before we pass, like when I witnessed my dad suffered greatly before he took his last breath, it is said by many that our souls can depart before our body leaves. So I pray that is true, because I know there's lots of people who have had loved ones suffer. Once we do pass, and through the great mediums that we know, all kinds of different mediums, there's no memory of suffering. People can remember how they passed, but there's no suffering. There's no pain there. But that moment that we take our last breath, okay, we open our eyes, and there before us, it's like crossing a finish line to life. Our loved ones are there. Our pets are there. Some people say there's parades and standing ovations, that our loved ones know that, how hard life is, and they're there to greet us. And I do believe we also have guides, and they're there as well. We may or may not, most people that I've interviewed who have had near-death experiences have some kind of a life review that we look back upon our life, and it's described in different ways, but you get an experience from other people's perspectives of how you dealt with them. So, if at a younger age you cause some harm and you hurt somebody, you may experience that from their perspective. Not a make wrong, but how did your soul progress? How did you grow? How could you have made better choices? And so I honestly don't believe that there's like a hell that we, sentence ourselves to that, and purgatory and all that stuff. I personally don't. I've been on this journey of exploring for too long. I think the hardest place to live, if there is a hell, is right here on earth, because it can be awful. It can be awful. But over there, and I like the term hereafter, because I think it really is like our world is within their world, just vibrating at a different vibration, if you want to call it that. But with the life review, we can experience that. But then we get to see the ripple effect of the good deeds, the actions that we took, the times we were kind, and what other people went on to do with that, like paying it forward. So you get to experience the impact that you've had in this life. I think there's an opportunity for us. I don't think we need a great rest. If you want to create a bed for yourself and healing, absolutely you can. But I think we're so filled with joy that our loved ones are there, and this is real. It makes this life here appear just like a dream. It's much more real there than what we have here. We can create with our thoughts. We can communicate with our thoughts. They say we can pick whatever age we want to be.
Wow.
Our best health. If you're in a wheelchair, you're not. But our pets, and there's so many beautiful stories I have with people who have had near-death experiences, who just experience such wonderful things. But from there, you can experience things. You can, whatever. Like, I have this secret dream to learn how to sing and be a singer. Quite honestly, I don't know if I'll ever do it here, other than singing "Happy Birthday." That's the only song I have mastered. But maybe I go on to, be a great singer over there, or an artist. We can continue what our passions are. If you never found that great love of your life while you're here on earth, you get them there. We really can experience everything that we didn't experience here. We can go to the halls of learning. We can learn. We can go to any time and space and time and learn about it. And, most importantly, we can learn how to connect with our loved ones here. I'm sure there's a team of people who are intermediaries that work with mediums over there to come through to over here, but it's glorious. And, at some point, hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe in the future, I think we can move on to different realms and be more part of an overall light and consciousness and things. But nobody forces you to do anything. You can live life in a land, I think, that looks much like we have now, but is really just a miraculous place. And we're very real. We're not balls of light. We are very, very real people.
Well, I'm looking at someone who, has transformed death in a way where you've looked at death in one way, and now all of a sudden it seems like in the same planet, the same world, same body, decades later, you're able to look at it in a whole different way. And isn't that funny about life itself, where we could be looking at one thing and it could be seen as this totally horrible, awful, terrible thing where I call hat, right? And all of a sudden it could be seen as this, think just beyond descriptive words that almost we look forward to and embrace. And, it's funny how life could transform on the same planet. It could feel like a totally different planet, that same concept. And I know for yourself, it's been through a lot of hard work and shake-up periods through loss and grief, but all these, temporary, just kind of disturbances of your life seem like they've allowed you to accelerate and elevate your consciousness, not, descend, overall. So there's a lot of short-term discomfort, but long-term, it seems like that has really elevated your life path. So Sandra, is there any other things that you wanted to discuss with our guests? Any words of wisdom? I know you have, like you mentioned, you have a wonderful book out which has my friend Bernie Siegel on the cover. If you want to hear Bernie Siegel's story, I was pulling into a random restaurant in Connecticut a year ago, and then I see this man walking in. I never met Bernie Siegel personally, and I said, "That's Bernie Siegel." And I walk up to him and I say, "Are you Dr. Bernie Siegel?" He says, "Yes." And it's fascinating. He was sitting right behind me the whole time. He was just talking about spiritual stuff. And that's just who he is. So you can't make this stuff up. So talk a little bit about, any other projects or your current podcast or any, events that you have coming, as well as any last, words that maybe, we could benefit from, because you've shared so much today. But I know you have an endless storehouse of wisdom in that head.
Oh my gosh, I can go on and on. Well, just
Yeah.
a quick Bernie Siegel story. My dad had cancer 30 years before he passed, and was one of those proven miracles that it just disappeared. And at the time, he was working with Bernie Siegel's exceptional cancer patients, doing the power of visualization. And when Dad's cancer went away, he says it's because of this man. And Dad rode his bicycle twice across the United States, raising money for Bernie Siegel's organization. So when I needed somebody to put a little blurb on front of my book, and the publisher says, "Do you know anybody famous and in this industry?" I thought, I don't know if Bernie Siegel would remember my dad, but you know what? I reached out, and you bet he did. So he wrote the blurb on the front. He wrote a beautiful forward, and he even verbalized and went to a recording studio to record the words on the audiobook. So shout out to Bernie Siegel.
Yes.
But what's happening? First of all, website is wedon'tdie.com. Each week we host online medium classes. It's a wonderful opportunity. Like, I took that medium class to know that, hey, there's really something to this. You don't have to go and be a medium, but just to have that experience for yourself, to know things that you shouldn't know about people and their loved ones. It is one of those experiences that, there's more to you than meets the eye. There definitely is. Also, we offer a free Sunday gathering, which is a non-denominational spiritual service like no other. Because we created it, and my friends and I are all like-minded people, it's got to be fun. It's got to be something we want to attend. So there's music videos, there's an opening prayer, closing prayer, there's an address, there's a topic that we talk about. It's extremely empowering. But the last 45 minutes of every one is a medium demonstration. So we regularly have about 200 people in our Zoom audience, and their loved ones come through, showing really just how close they are. So it's great. That's what's coming up. Some of our tutors are traveling. You can catch a class with them if you like. There's a store page at wedon'tdie.com. There's also a Sunday gathering page that you can go watch some past Sunday gatherings. You can register for upcoming ones. My 2 podcasts are there. If you go into radio shows, there's We Don't Die Radio with 400 episodes, Shades of the Afterlife with over 140 episodes. That's there. You can join our Facebook group. What I want to tell a couple things just to hear at the end is some of the latest research that I've been doing is I've been following the great Dr. Christopher Kerr, who is a hospice doctor. And we hear these stories just before someone passes, that maybe they can reach out and, a loved one is there, or they see into the afterlife. But he's proven it's much more than that. After researching something like 1,600 hospice patients, it's usually within the final month or the final weeks before someone passes that they dream a lot. And the dreams are just as real as any interactions they have with human beings. The difference is the dreams are their loved ones. They appear to them healthy, happy, younger. They tell them they're going on a trip together. And so very often you'll hear these stories and they're just so beautiful. Even people see people that they were never told were dead. And they are, and there's just so many wonderful stories about that. I just recently did an episode on Shades of the Afterlife about terminal lucidity, people who have been brain damaged or complete dementia. And then something happens in those last moments before they pass, that all their memories come back. They're wide awake. They can have conversations, and science can't explain, where that is and why that happens. But there's so many cool reasons to comfortably believe in the afterlife. But I want to leave everybody with just some words from Albert Einstein. We can look at life that everything is a miracle or nothing is a miracle. I think those in the afterlife came, that world came before this world, and they created this world of ours so that we can really get the most advancement for our soul. We can't really advance as much if everything's good all of the time, but give us a little sorrow, give us some struggles, give us things to overcome. And that's when we can really, get so much out of life. But that they created our world as a heaven on earth. So much of what we're going to see there will be familiar to us because they created it here. The plants, the animals, the flowers, all of that. But Albert Einstein went on to do some magnificent things in his life. And I attribute that because he was looking for the miracles, finding the good. And when we start living our life, whether we believe it or not, that we are miraculous and everything around us is a miracle. And it is, because the original planet Earth was just rock and vegetation and water. And out of that, we have, a computer that we're looking at each other and everything around us. I mean, it is miraculous, but I think we can have a miraculous life. I think we'll get more messages from our loved ones. I think we'll have more synchronicities. Don't be hard on yourself if you fail. We all have a negative mind in us, that little ego voice that never shuts up. That's not who we really are. We can tuck that to one side every now and again and push forward in the direction of our dreams.
Sandra, thank you. And, I think your radio show is all about miracles. The ultimate miracle is surviving death, and we don't die. And as I say, if we recognize that we don't die, we can only live. And then by recognizing the ultimate miracle of life itself, the eternity of the soul, we'll be able to find more miracles through life itself by understanding that life is a choice here. And that choice is, expanded upon our abilities to find everyday miracles. And you alluded to the notion of reality, where everything was once an imagination. And from a young age, we were taught regurgitation over imagination. But no, imagination is really the reality that we're living in. And it's important for people to expand their worlds to imagination and trust that over what they currently know. I think that's significant. And you certainly have embodying, being able to stretch yourself in your bounds through taking yourself out of that, sometimes comfort zone or uncomfortable zone, and really stretching those bounds. So Sandra, you are welcome anytime you want to back on my channel. Always good to have a friend, and I couldn't thank you enough for all of your work and over 400 episodes of interviews, which I know has touched thousands upon thousands of souls globally. And it all started with the ability to ask and tune in and to be open to different possibilities of reality. So Sandra Champlain, thank you so much for coming on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. You're welcome back anytime, and as always, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to episode 18. That was a wonderful conversation with Sandra Champlain. She was really able to put into practice how one could transform, maybe as an inner skeptic to a firm believer, and how her own journey could really be a roadmap for many seekers on their path to understand the afterlife and how it could be a part of your everyday life and the possibility of transformation of your own belief system in your own life. So thank you for tuning into my interview with Sandra Champlain. It was a wonderful conversation. Please make sure you subscribe to the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. We're now available cross-stream on all platforms, so you can stay current and up to date for weekly conversations that are enriching, meaningful, inspiring, and full of wisdom. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week, and many blessings to all.